Welcome to another deep dive with us.
Yeah.
You know we love to go deep on topics that you care about, and today we're going to be looking at Agile project management
Yeah.
with the help of a YouTube video
Awesome.
that a listener sent in. What's really cool about this video is that it's an Agile expert, just like yourself, answering rapid-fire PMP exam questions.
Ooh, I like it.
Which I think is such a good way to learn.
Absolutely.
It's so concise, right? You just cut to the chase.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're getting right to the point.
Yeah, and one of the things that really stood out to me in this video is this whole idea that Agile is all about value.
Right.
But what does that actually look like? Yeah, but it's easy to just say that.
Yeah.
But how do Agile teams actually define and measure value? What's a practical way of doing it?
That's a great question. And I think one of the best ways to look at this is from just the idea of solving problems. Are you solving the customer's problems and doing it quickly?
Yeah.
Right. So it's really about focusing on features that are directly solving the customer's problems. And a lot of times in traditional project management,
Right.
you might deviate from the plan a little bit if you see a better way of doing something. And that's one of the key things about Agile. It's really, you're constantly adjusting based on what the customer wants, needs at that time.
It's like the plan in a traditional waterfall is like set in stone.
Yeah.
But the plan in Agile is more of a living thing.
Absolutely.
Right. It's constantly changing. So it's really less about just checking boxes and more about making sure that those boxes are actually like the right ones.
Absolutely.
In the first place.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about another key principle of Agile, which is this customer collaboration piece.
Yes.
In the video, they were talking about constant touch points with the customer. And so how important is that? Is that one of the things that really sets Agile apart from waterfall?
It is. Agile recognizes that customer needs and market demands are constantly changing.
Yeah.
So instead of waiting until the very end to get feedback, you're constantly checking in and making sure that you're on the right track.
It's almost like a course correction mechanism built into the process.
Precisely.
Yeah, it's like a GPS that constantly updates.
Yes.
Like based on traffic and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I like how the video actually gave a concrete example of Agile teams working closely with someone like a product owner.
Right.
And so what do you think is the role of the product owner in keeping everybody aligned?
So think of the product owner as a bridge between the development team and the customer.
Oh, okay.
Right. They have a deep understanding of the customer's needs and also the technical capabilities of the team.
Okay.
And so they're able to really help prioritize features and make sure that the team is always working on the most important things.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's get into some of the practices that actually make Agile work.
Yeah.
So the video talked about a few of them: daily stand-ups,
Right.
sprint reviews, retrospectives, and these visual management tools.
Yeah.
Can you just give us an example of how one of these practices plays out in a real team? How would they actually do it?
Sure. So let's take, for example, a daily stand-up. Imagine you have a team of developers, designers, testers, and you're all gathered around a whiteboard for about 15 minutes each morning.
Oh.
And, each person kind of shares what they did yesterday, what they're planning to do today, and if they have any roadblocks. And it's just a quick way to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, and also to flag any potential problems.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They become really big problems.
Yeah, and so if somebody's stuck, you can quickly, get them unstuck.
Yeah, and, they talked about these visual management tools in the video.
Yes.
Things like Kanban boards and burn down charts.
Yeah.
Those seem pretty important. What do you think? What's their role?
It's a great way to visualize your work and track progress. It's like having a dashboard for your project that everybody can see and understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So instead of having all these reports and all this stuff, everybody kind of has a shared understanding.
Absolutely.
Of where the project stands.
Right.
So it's much more transparent.
Yes.
That's cool. Now, another concept that kind of stood out to me in this video is this idea of self-organizing teams.
Right.
With diverse skills.
Yeah.
This whole team approach.
Yeah.
Which seems pretty radical.
It is.
Compared to traditional project structures.
Yeah. You have individuals with different areas of expertise all working together as a single unit. And it's really important to have those different perspectives because, Agile projects are all about, blending the technical with the creative, with the business. And this diversity is really important because it fosters innovation.
Yeah.
And it helps break down silos.
Yeah, because if you think about it, in traditional projects, you have all these different departments working in isolation. So how does this team structure play into like this whole managing dependencies thing that they were talking about in the video?
Right. So if you think about in a traditional project, you have teams constantly waiting on each other to get things done. And this can create a lot of delays.
Yeah.
With Agile teams, you aim to bring all that necessary expertise within the team.
Right.
So you don't have to wait for somebody.
So you don't have those bottlenecks.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, so we've talked about like the Agile fundamentals, some key practices.
Yeah.
But I know there's like all these different Agile frameworks out there where they mentioned Scrum, Kanban, extreme programming, SAFe.
Yes.
How do all these frameworks fit into like the bigger picture of Agile?
Yeah.
Do they all like operate under the same principles?
Absolutely. So all those frameworks really just offer a different approach to implementing Agile.
Okay.
But they all share those same fundamental principles that are outlined in the Agile Manifesto.
Almost like different dialects of the same language.
Exactly.
So they all have the same like underlying grammar, but different pronunciations and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And I remember they talked about this thing in the video called scrums of scrums within the SAFe framework. What is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So how SAFe helps to coordinate work across multiple teams is through these scrums, especially when you have like a really large project, you have multiple teams working on it.
Right.
And so it's basically a meeting of representatives from each of those teams. And they get together and they kind of discuss their progress.
Gotcha.
Any roadblocks that they're having.
So it's basically a way to make sure that everybody's still like rowing in the same direction.
Exactly.
Even though they might be in different boats.
Yep.
Now, I really want to get into the differences between Agile and Waterfall.
Okay.
But I think we're going to have to save that for the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
So we will pick up right where we left off.
Okay.
After a quick break. So before the part 2, we were talking about the differences between Agile and Waterfall.
Right.
And one of the things that really jumped out at me from this video is how differently Agile and Waterfall deal with change.
Yeah.
Like it seems like Agile embraces change.
Absolutely.
Whereas Waterfall is more like, we have a plan.
Yep.
Let's stick to it no matter what.
Exactly. Yeah. The beauty of Agile is that it's built to handle those inevitable shifts that happen, in every project. Think of Waterfall as building a house, right? From a blueprint. You have a set plan, you're going step by step. But what happens if you realize halfway through that you need to add a bedroom?
Right, or move a wall or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Agile allows you to adjust, It's more like using Legos. You have a general idea of what you want to create.
Right.
But you're also open to experimenting, changing things as you go.
So if you're working on something where like, things are constantly changing,
right,
like maybe developing a new app or something, Agile would be the way to go.
Absolutely. Especially when you're in those environments where like things are uncertain or there's a lot of competition or, it's just like, things are moving quickly.
And in that video, they talked about this example of how Agile teams reprioritize features based on feedback, which you wouldn't see in a Waterfall.
No, not at all.
Project. So I guess my next question is, they talked about this whole transitioning to Agile.
Right.
Like, how do you actually move a whole organization from Waterfall to Agile? Because it seems like a massive undertaking. It's not just the processes, but it's the whole.
It's a shift. So the culture, it's the mindset
of the company.
Yeah, you're changing the way people think and work. It's not just, implementing stand-ups or using a Kanban board. It's about, really embracing that Agile mindset.
Yeah, and so it's really not about just like imposing Agile from the top down, but creating an environment where people understand the benefits and are excited to use it.
Yes, you need buy-in from everybody.
Right, from the CEO all the way down to like
the newest,
the interns and stuff like that. And that takes time.
It does.
It's like it's not something you can just like
overnight
flip a switch and expect everybody to be like Agile experts.
Yeah. And, speaking of time, they talked about this idea of a hybrid approach.
Right.
Like maybe that's a good stepping stone.
It is.
Like you start incorporating some Agile principles into existing Waterfall processes. So you kind of like dip your toes in the water before you like fully commit.
Yes.
So earlier you talked about this idea of applying Agile principles beyond software development.
Yes.
And I'm really intrigued by this. I think it's a fascinating concept.
It is.
But is it actually practical? Can you give me an example? Yeah, so imagine taking an agile approach to like climate change.
Okay.
Right. So instead of trying to come up with one massive overarching solution,
right.
maybe it takes years to implement.
Right.
You could break the problem down.
Into smaller chunks.
Into smaller, more manageable pieces.
Okay.
Right. And then, just like an agile project, you can experiment.
Right.
You can gather data.
See what's working, what's not.
Yeah.
And then adapt.
Exactly.
Based on that. I like that a lot. It's almost like you're crowdsourcing solutions.
Yes.
On a global scale.
Exactly.
And you're constantly iterating.
Yes.
And improving.
Exactly. And by involving, diverse perspectives.
Right.
You have scientists.
Right.
Policymakers, community leaders.
Yeah.
Businesses, everyday citizens.
Like this collective intelligence
exactly.
that can actually address these problems.
It is.
And, you mentioned climate change.
Yeah.
But it's not limited to that.
No.
Right. You can apply it to like poverty, education, healthcare, all these really complex problems.
Those wicked problems.
Yeah. And it almost seems like by using Agile,
right,
we could move away from those like top-down bureaucratic solutions.
Yes.
That never really seem to work.
They don't.
And I really like that.
Yeah. Agile allows us to think differently.
Yeah.
To be more experimental.
Right.
More collaborative.
More responsive to change.
Yes.
I really like this whole idea.
Yeah.
Now, they also talked about this concept of limiting work in progress.
Right.
Why is that so important in Agile?
It's so important. Think of it like juggling.
Okay.
You can only keep so many balls in the air at once.
Right.
Right before you start dropping them.
Yeah, you get overwhelmed.
Exactly. You have too many projects, too many tasks, too many distractions, and you're not really focusing on finishing anything.
Yeah.
So by limiting your work in progress, you're forcing yourself to focus on finishing what you started.
Instead of having like 10 things going at once.
Exactly. And it also improves the quality of your work.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it reduces stress.
You're not as stressed out.
Yeah, and you're able to deliver value more efficiently.
Yeah, because you're focusing on the thing that needs to be done at that moment.
Yes.
I also like how Agile really focuses on these frequent feedback loops.
Absolutely.
You have your sprint reviews, your daily stand-ups, retrospectives. Why is that so important?
It's all about getting feedback early and often and making those adjustments along the way.
It reminds me of that saying, like, fail fast, fail often.
Yes.
Like, Agile encourages teams to, like, experiment, learn from their mistakes, and just iterate.
Exactly.
So it's much more dynamic and responsive.
Yes, it is.
Than that traditional, like, plan and execute.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to be okay with, maybe failing.
Right.
But learning from those failures.
Yeah. Like, it's not a bad thing to fail as long as you learn.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the pitfalls that you see teams or organizations fall into when they're trying to transition to Agile?
That's a great question. I think one of the biggest challenges is moving away from that command and control mentality.
Which is so prevalent in traditional organizations, right? So Agile requires more of like a
collaborative,
decentralized approach.
Yeah.
And that's a huge shift.
It's a mindset shift.
For people who are used to working in that command and control kind of environment.
Yeah.
Now you're saying like, hey, we need to be more collaborative. We need to be.
Yeah. And one of the biggest pitfalls I see is when organizations treat Agile as like a set of rules that have to be followed, like blindly, right? Rather than principles to be adapted.
It should be flexible.
It should be flexible.
Based on the needs of the team or the project.
The context
of everything.
Yeah.
And another one I would imagine is that lack of buy-in from leadership.
Absolutely.
Right. Like
if the people at the top aren't on board, it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, it goes back to that whole change management.
Exactly. Yeah, you need to bring people along.
Yeah.
You need to have that dialogue.
Be open, communicate with everybody.
Exactly.
So what advice would you give someone who's just starting their Agile journey? Like, where do they begin?
Start with the Agile Manifesto.
Okay, the Agile Manifesto.
The foundation.
The foundation of it all.
Yes.
Right.
And it lays out those core values and principles that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And then, once you have a good grasp of those fundamentals, start experimenting with different Agile practices and frameworks.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to try things out.
Right.
See what works for you and your team.
See what sticks.
Yeah.
So it's not about becoming like a certified Agile expert right away, but it's about
embracing the mindset.
The mindset of continuous learning and improvement.
Agile is a journey.
It's a journey.
Not a destination.
Not a destination.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about another key aspect of Agile that we haven't really explicitly talked about, which is the collaboration.
Yes.
And communication.
Yeah, that's the heart
piece. Like you can't have self-organizing teams or frequent feedback loops or continuous improvement without open
communication
and teamwork.
And teamwork. So being able to communicate openly and honestly.
With your team members being willing to
help each other out.
All of that's crucial for Agile to succeed.
It is. It's about creating a culture of trust and collaboration where everybody feels empowered.
I like that. This has been so insightful. I feel like I've learned so much about Agile today.
Awesome.
And I'm actually really excited to start applying some of these principles to my own work. And I'm sure our listeners are feeling the same way. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's like the one key takeaway you want listeners to walk away with?
That Agile is more than just a set of practices or a project management methodology. It's a mindset.
It's a mindset.
A way of thinking that can empower you to achieve amazing things.
So embrace change.
Yeah.
Collaborate effectively. Focus on delivering value.
Yes.
Like those are all principles that can be applied
to
any aspect of life.
Yeah. And you know what I like about Agile?
Is that it's constantly evolving.
It is.
You know, as we learn more about how to work more effectively, collaborate better, adapt to change. Like the Agile mindset's going to keep evolving.
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone who's listening to this and thinking like, okay, this all sounds great, but I don't even know where to start?
Start small. Experiment with Agile principles in your own work.
Okay.
Your personal projects, your daily life.
Okay.
See how, embracing flexibility, collaboration, continuous improvement can help you.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Exactly.
Right. There's tons of resources out there.
There are.
Online.
Books.
Communities. So connect with other Agile practitioners.
Right.
Learn from their experience. Share your own.
That's a great note to end on.
Awesome.
Embrace the Agile mindset.
Yes.
Experiment.
Yeah.
Learn, connect with others.
Yes.
And make a difference. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure.
Into Agile. It's been a fascinating conversation.
Yes, it has.
And to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep learning.
Keep diving deep.
And keep diving deep. We'll see you next time.
See you later.
All right, so we're back. And before the break, we were talking about this idea of applying Agile principles to some of the world's biggest challenges.
Right.
Which is a pretty bold concept. Like, how would that actually work?
Well, let's take an Agile approach to climate change, for example.
Okay.
Instead of trying to come up with this massive overarching solution that may take years to implement, we can break the problem down into smaller, more manageable pieces.
So instead of trying to boil the ocean, we're just focusing on very specific steps we can take right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then just like in an Agile project, we can experiment with those solutions.
Absolutely.
Gather data.
See what's working.
See what's working, what's not working. And then adapt our approach.
Exactly.
Based on that feedback.
Yeah, it's almost like using Agile to crowdsource solutions on a global scale.
I like that.
Right.
You're constantly iterating, you're constantly improving.
Exactly, and involving all these diverse perspectives from scientists to policymakers to community leaders to businesses.
It's like this collective intelligence.
Exactly.
That we're tapping into to actually solve these problems.
Absolutely.
And it's not just limited to climate change.
No, not at all.
You mentioned poverty, education, healthcare, all these really
complex issues.
Yeah. And so by using Agile, it seems like we can move away from those top-down, very bureaucratic solutions.
That often fail.
Yeah. I like that. This has been such an eye-opening conversation. It's made me realize that Agile is so much more than just a project management methodology.
Yeah, it's a way of thinking.
It's a way of thinking. It's a set of principles that we can apply to
pretty much any challenge we face.
Any challenge.
Yeah, whether it's in our personal lives, our work, or even on a global scale.
And I think the most exciting thing about Agile is that it's constantly evolving.
It is.
Like, as we learn more about how to work more effectively, collaborate better, adapt to change, like, the Agile mindset will just keep
evolving
to help us tackle even bigger and more complex